So we're going to go I'm going to explain a little bit about twin patterns, because that can be very, very toxic. Let me see if I can get to it, on our bodies. And I want to give you a little bit of coaching here. And those of you from the birth dance already know, and some of you in the Core Light Foundation program are already signed up for this particular 3-module course. And I know you've been waiting, and Cheryl, you may want to talk to Connie about when she'll be ready to do this.
She's ready.
Is she ready?
Yeah, we just talked about it.
Just talked about it. Okay, great. And the reason it's called Twin Patterns Extension course is because really the birth dance should come first, because that gives you the tools to get really solid about your own patterns. Yep. And then what I realized in the birth dance at the end was that there were some people that actually couldn't get through their birth dance program or even NFR because there was so much lost twin going on. We're going to define what lost twin is for those of you who are going to be listening to the recording and those of you who it's new to. And in the birth dance, obviously it's familiar, but when there's this pattern going on, it can affect massively our health, our sense of life and death, our sense of if we're going to make it or pull through, our sense of doom. There's all kinds of things that are dramatically exaggerated, not exaggerated in a bad way, but life is much more extreme if we had a twin that we lost in the womb, okay? Which is why I'm calling this little program, it's not little, it's actually very huge because of the ramifications, which is why it's a 3-module as opposed to a light course. But I'm going to give you like an overview that you can use immediately now to determine if it's even relevant to you. And if it's not relevant to you, no big deal. At least it's going to help you understand other people that you might come into contact and have a lot more compassion for them. And if it is relevant, then I highly recommend that you join us in the twin program. But so from lost to life, where and I'm coming from, just so you know, full disclosure, from a place of where I lost a twin in the womb very early on. And so what we have to do is understand the story, separate from it, start to differentiate who I am from who twin is and everybody else that we've twinned with, and then start to individuate into who you are as your own separate being. And some of you I'm really getting, when you're talking about your inner lioness and not being a doormat anymore, you are moving out of that twin, I'll call it the twin trauma pattern, into the gift of being twin, where you understand what it's like to be totally connected to others with incredible sensitivity and gifts. And you've also got the gift of being, getting a sense of your own self. So we're going to go kind of a little bit, and here, some of you already know this, if you sense in yourself that you had a lost twin or twins or a lost sibling, yep, and the lost sibling can be a miscarriage, a stillborn. I've worked with, tons of people over the decades where they might have had a couple of miscarriages before them, or abortions. I worked with one family, and what happened? And this was tragic, and why it's so important that we understand this. The mom brought in her son who'd had a massive burn all over his face, from face down to his torso, and he was still traumatized. So we worked with that, and then she brought in her younger son because she thought he was doing so well, and she just knew that this little fella, he was about 9 or 10, was always worrying and freaking out. And when I did the pre-history with the mom, she'd had an abortion. And this little kid was carrying the loss of his baby brother, yeah, his older brother, actually. And what was heartbreaking for me, that, just telling the truth to that little guy who knew in his bones, in his cells, that something was really wrong and somebody was missing, could have calmed everything down. And what instead happened was she froze. She got very kind of critical of me and said, "We don't discuss any of those things. That's completely private and nobody should ever know what happened." So that's a secret. And I completely understand it. But that little boy is going to be living with that trauma of something missing that he doesn't know what it is, but he knows something's terribly wrong, and he'll think, he did think it was something wrong with him. But I couldn't go any further, and that was the last I saw of the family because I had trodden on their toes. So what I'm hoping is, the more we get this information out there, I'm kind of telling you my failures so you understand why I'm so passionate about this. It can help us internally, and it may be able to help others too, so that they don't carry this lifelong horrible sense of failure. Yeah. So, do you get confused sometimes wondering who you are, who you are not, whose life you're living? Some people never even realize that they're not living their own life. They're living other people's lives or family expectations. Are you living on this planet or somewhere else? I've had a few people that absolutely knew they weren't from this planet. They thought humans were absolutely horrible. I had women who came in and tremendous grief and anxiety, and she only could relate to animals and thought humans were just horrendous, vicious species, and wanted to go home. And then we did some work. She cried her way all the way through, and then she discovered, she did an ultrasound in a mall, and she discovered she had a third kidney. Very common to have an extra organ or an extra something if there was a twin in the womb. Yeah. So she was merged with her twin who was not on the planet and felt very betrayed by everybody who was on the planet. So that was the pattern she was living. So, they can seem like bizarre symptoms, but it can be sometimes explained by this. Are you living life for you or another? And the reason I talk about Elvis is because he had a twin that was known. I don't know if you know that. Do you know that?
I didn't know.
You didn't know. He had a twin that was known, I think, who died at birth. And what they realized, so Elvis became, this incredible, what was he, king of rock, wasn't he? And just he had this passion that drove him and drove him. And what it turned out, and this I learned when I did my very first early work with Twin with Ray Castellino, and he talked about Elvis, and that it drove him into addiction. It drove him. All his songs were written for his twin, his lost twin. And we will project all kinds of heroism onto our twin as if they're the ones that can save us. And somebody that I recently discovered was Michael Jackson. Yeah. And the way he, was again a genius, an out of the box thinker. And I don't know if you know that he had an autoimmune disease.
He had what?
Oh, an autoimmune disease.
Oh.
And he had vitiligo and lupus, apparently. And the vitiligo, I read about it only recently. I was doing my research on the twin course. And I just thought, there's a pattern here that is showing up. And I remember a friend of ours in Ojai, who's a movie producer, has vitiligo. And Michael Jackson gave her a grant of $1,000. This was like 30 years ago. Because she had vitiligo and she was studying acting, and he wanted to support other people who had vitiligo like him. Yeah? And that's one of the reasons, or the reason that his face got whiter and whiter, was because his skin was getting whiter and whiter. So a common issue with twin loss is autoimmune, or illnesses where they think they're dying. Anyway, we'll talk more about Michael Jackson later, but it seemed like, looking at the pattern of his life, he was trying to fill a hole. And the fact that he only lived a few miles up the road from us is interesting too. So once you've learned the basic 5 and 5 birth dance steps, those of you do, then you can build on that foundation to create a greater clarity and sense of certainty in yourself versus other, who you are. And then the shifts you make will permeate and transform your whole life. So, some of you have already seen this. And I use this because, if you see the child on the left, here's the question. The child on the left, if she or he has lost a twin in the womb, will often blame themselves, have a ton of shame, go through survivor guilt, believe it was their fault. It's a whole litany of stuff that will cause them to shut down and go to the bottom of the ladder, the polyvagal ladder. They'll be in reptilian mode because they cannot come out and shine. Or there'll be a confusion where they give all the love and light to twin who is on the other side. Yeah. So you're going to be seeing this picture in many ways. So right now, this kid is in reptilian mode, and she's projecting on this kid, the one who's died, all the gifts. Yeah, following me? And what we're exploring is to let this one, it's like to do a flip where the child who is on planet Earth thrives and sparkles and allows twin to die. Yeah, and that can be very hard, and we can keep recreating the same old life and death situation over and over and over again, which is not healthy for our immune systems, and it's not healthy for our brains. So when a twin dies before birth, the surviving twin experiences life in a way that is very different from regular singletons. And when I talk about a twin, just know, some of you, that it can be relevant if there's what one of my families called the death womb, if there's miscarriage energy in there or abortion energy in there. A singleton will feel it, or if a sibling dies very young, can still feel it. Yeah. So, that there's actually tons of stuff. I'm trying to keep it kind of nice and simple and not overwhelming for you, but just to kind of give you a taste of, there's a whole different paradigm when we honor and acknowledge if we had a sense that there was somebody missing or something missing in our lives. So the earlier the loss, the deeper the suffering. So if a twin, if the womb was really toxic and a twin left very early, that happens before the nerve endings are myelinated, which means they're protected. It means that they have a protecting coating. If this is your neuron, there's this nice protective coating that keeps you from taking on trauma too intensely. So if the loss is really early, you don't have that protective coating, and certainly be very deep. So here are the traits. Yeah, that there's an amazing woman. Her name is she's actually English, and she died recently. She died actually a few years ago. I'll spell out her name in a little bit, but she did a lot of research. I think she discovered she was a twin in about 2002, 2003. And so she did this research. She was a therapist, English therapist. And these are the key traits that, out of hundreds of people who were proven that they had lost twins. It wasn't just a sense in their bones, but proven. So a lifelong sense of something missing, fear of rejection, not realizing one's potential, feeling different from others, searching for something unknown, feeling alone even among friends, fear of abandonment, problem with anger, too much or too little, too much of a doormat, perpetual feeling of dissatisfaction, and two very different sides to one's character. So if you look back at this, these are two very different sides. Yeah, one is the side that is claiming life, and the other is the side that's retreated from life, for example. So these we're just kind of skimming through. And Althea Hayton is the researcher who discovered through chiropractic that she had a vanishing twin. I think I discovered it I had a vanishing twin in probably about 1991. And I called my mom and said, you know, was I a twin? Do you remember having a mini miscarriage or a bleed or something? And, you know, we agreed that, you know, we have twins in the family. Our grandmother was a twin. She was orphaned at age 2, but she was a twin. So there can be patterns in the family. So this is me in Japan. And the reason this photo has always struck me is that I'm split. Yep. I'm split, and when I've looked at old family videos, I am either enraged, I'll show you. So here I was, and this is, I'm 5 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. I'm grief-stricken all the time. Survivor's guilt, you know, because my twin died very, very early in the womb, about 8 days. So that was before the myelination. I was totally bonded, twinned with my grandfather, who was in POW camp for 4 years in Hong Kong during the war. And I was carrying his survivor's guilt. Yep. Not just my own survivor's guilt of having, you know, survived my twin, and why was it me and why wasn't it? You know, the twin should have lived. The twin was the one they wanted, not me. You know, and I'm just a girl. So all these things, they wanted a boy, the twin was a boy. So all this resentment, rage, that I never knew. I never understood. I kept trying to push it down and pretend that I was a nice little girl. And then I got sent to a convent, the way you had to be a nice little girl, good little girl. But very lonely, and majorly betrayed, because twin agreed, in quotes, I thought, to let me, you know, come in with me and help me, because I didn't want to come here on my own. There's too much going on this planet. I didn't want to be here. So twin abandoned me, and parents didn't get me and sent me to get, you know, tonsils out and various things. So rage and massive shame that there must be something very wrong with me. Yeah. So these are things, you know, I can talk about now, I can laugh about it now because I don't have a charge. But these are deep things that Althea Hayton calls them womb twins. Womb twins will carry and have so much shame that they have such intense emotions, and that it's so hard to be alive every day. They often think about death and dying. They often think that they're not going to make it. I remember when I got to 30, I was amazed because I didn't think I'd make it, because I'd nearly died hitchhiking to India when I was 20. When I got to 50, and my dad called me to say happy birthday, and it was like, you know, I never thought I'd make it to 50. I was able to tell him that I never thought I'd make it to 50, and here I am. And now I'm, you know, 16 years later, and I'm probably thriving more than I ever have. So what's great when you unlock these patterns, that death pattern melts away because it's not relevant anymore, because you're not carrying your twin's dead energy. So, you know, a lot of kids will hide this because, or pretend, or, you know, unless it becomes so overwhelming that they can't, and they just, you know, shot with ADD and temper tantrums, and nobody understands them, and then they get medicated. Thank goodness they didn't medicate us in those days. So there was a split, you know, which is why that picture to me was so potent, because it was between life and death. I thought I should have died. A part of me died with twin. Yeah. Japan versus the Allies, you know, a lot of the Japanese kids at the convent I went to, you know, were my friends. And yet, why did the Americans bomb my friends? And why did they put my grandfather in POW camp? And why did a lot of people get murdered? no, there was all this split. And then Anne's and my middle sister was in a coma, probably for the same reasons. And she and I have asked her why she, what happened. She was in a coma for 19 days. So living in Japan, and the toxicity of the trauma of the Japanese, the Hiroshima victims that would wander around where we lived. That this isn't to freak you out. This is just to say that, a twinless twin or a womb twin will take on the traumas around when they shouldn't have to. Yeah, health versus sickness. I was always sickly, and who am I? They wanted twin, so I need to try and be that twin. And I didn't know who I was, and I got confused between myself and my sister, who had nearly died with a terrible pneumonia. And the whole family constellated around, or let's say me and my parents did, I'll speak for myself, constellated around trying to keep her here and help her get well. So that meant no room for me, which was normal, because as a twin, it's a negotiation. So here's the bad news. Your traits become your state. So those patterns become your state, become your fate, and it's who you think you are. You identify with it psychologically and physically as if it's you. Yeah, that's what can happen with any kind of trauma. Yeah, early trauma, birth patterns, or PTSD, chronic PTSD. I think the reason for this twin piece is that I'm sharing this as partly, it's very near and dear to my heart, and I work with a lot of people who have a twin pattern over the decades. I'm very honored and blessed that to have been able to do this. And with the twin pattern, it's like we're bringing it out into the open, that it's more prevalent than we think, or that we're aware of. And once we're aware, we can have tons of compassion for ourselves, if it's us, if it's somebody that you know intimately, like yourself, or if it's others in your family, and your close friends that happen to be super dramatic or super sick or super, extreme anything, that we can understand that it's actually not who you are, and it's not your fate or their fate. And actually, no, it's not your fate. I don't believe that, and I don't see that anymore as people being stuck. But how do you stop it? Yeah? What helped me, as in Japan, is something shone through. There was in my deepest, darkest places. I'm a little teary here. There was always a knowing. It could have been the gift of twin, where I knew there was something more and bigger on the other side, or bigger than me, and that I had to keep going. And actually, in those of you who've done the birth dance, and we talk about the protector and the nurturer. Yeah, remember that? And for me, it was my grandfather. My parents were in so much distress themselves and trauma. And my grandfather, even though he'd gone through World War II, even though he'd been in POW camp, even though he was like the adjutant, which was the communicator between the Japanese officers and his own fellow prisoners, and he must have seen horrors, there was something that kept him going, which was his heart, his love, his playfulness, his laughter, his joy. And he's the one that inspired me to write the play formula. And my mom, his daughter, I think he's the one that came through and said, you got to keep focusing on this, because that's all that will get you through. Well, not all, but so that light that he was holding kept me going. And when I scanned, so it's like he was my protector at some level. So, and I know in all of your lives, there is someone or something or great spirit or the universe or nature that keeps you going and has kept you going, and that we hold for those around us who may be in their dark night, that they can get through it too. And just the clearer we get our frequency, and I know you've heard me say this many times, the more we can help others just by being us and not being in the twin place of, I'm never good enough and it's never enough that I can do for others. So the twin, there are these incredible, unique gifts that twins have because of being so connected to a beloved friend or soulmate in the womb. That is empathy and awareness and a big vision and a connection with a deeper source, a deeper source like this for me, and this, living in Japan. I had to find that place, even though Japan felt very traumatized. There was still this very deep place, and I think one of the gifts my parents gave me was I traveled around the country because my dad was in a hockey team of all things. And so we traveled to these little tiny ryokans, little places, little inns, and we would soak in the hot springs and we would go to these sacred places. And I feel very lucky that happened to give me the other side of what's possible. So, so there are these incredible gifts that once we move through and honor the death piece and let twin die. Now that sounds like a strong word, but let twin go and claim your life and who you are. Just magic can happen, and also health can improve. Yep. And sometimes we can be stuck because this is rejuvenate your brain and this is about health. Sometimes we've made an agreement or a contract that we can never be healthy because of what happened to twin. And what's really important, to give you a little clue, we work with, letting twin go, and it was twin that was the one that was unhealthy. The twin might have left because of an infection in the womb or toxins, or, it was too crowded, or whatever it was, or too emotionally toxic, or all kinds of reasons. Once we stop identifying with twin as if that's us and start identifying with you as the chosen one who has made it, is actually the alpha twin, then the immune system can kick in and all kinds of miracles can happen. So what do we do in module 1? It's identify and separate. Then module 2 is differentiate, and module 3 is individuate and thrive. And I think that's, So we work with identity confusions, who am I versus other. We work with clearing that survivor's guilt. We work with goal-setting terror. That can be terrifying for a twin, because if you get really clear that you're going to live or you're going to be successful, then somebody else might die. It can be that extreme. The truth is, it's not in the present, but it can feel like it unless, we let go of carrying those original decisions. And that way we can actually transform relationships, and we choose life over death. And I think that, okay. Am I going too fast? Going okay? Give me a thumbs up if I'm going okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm speeding. So the twinless, these are the twin names: twinless twin, womb twin survivor, surviving twin, and then what the lost twin has been called is the vanishing twin. And often they didn't really vanish because, there's still a sign of them in the womb with an ultrasound, a lost twin, the dead twin, or the missing twin. So these are names that the literature talks about. And here is Althea Hayton again. They're the soul survivors. Their twin died in the womb or around birth, and it leaves a profound imprint on the survivor that is not fully accessible until a vocabulary is provided to understand it. And that's what this 3-module course is about, is to give the vocabulary. So we can go, and work with, key issues that might come up that like Francis in that session last time, that we work with a key issue and then the charge goes, and it no longer needs to run us anymore. And then our brain can change. They have a specific psychological makeup, which appears to be related to the loss of their twin. We've covered that. And here's just some statistics. 78 of pregnancies that start out with twins end up with only one. That's a huge amount of pregnancies that have a lost twin. Yeah, and that's according to sonogram studies. And I think there's a UCLA study from the early 90s. I remember it being around in the early 90s when I was researching this back then. And twins make up only 2% of the population. Althea Hayden says 1%, but this research is 2%. This comes from a chiropractic group, and the original chiropractor, Dr. Palmer, his mother was originally a singleton, had a lost twin, so he would understand that perspective. So, yeah, so 2% of the population and vanishing twin syndrome. That's what kind of more chiropractic and Western medicine calls this. But you know, the twin didn't vanish because he or she are still hanging around with us, and it's time for us to let them go and transform. So, you know, my question is, who are you? You know, are you you, or are you somebody else, or has a part of you vanished? Who are you really? And that's what we'll be exploring. Okay, and I think that's it. Oh, join us to explore, discover, and reclaim the real you. I think that's it. Oh, yeah, we've talked about Elvis. Okay, so just know, you know, that this can be a very toxic piece energetically that can be running us in terms of toxic emotion, toxic spiritually, because it affects us. It goes God or Great Spirit, and then it goes twin, and then the bonding happens with mother. And if twin leaves, we may merge in a really unhealthy way with mother until that heals. So there's all kinds of bonding and merging, or we can merge in an unhealthy way with partners. Let's see. This is the time to work with the gray screen. Oh, okay. I can post the one that I use, which I've used on and off. Occasionally I'll use coconut oil. Occasionally I'll use mine that I still like. And I know, Anne, you've got some English ones, hard to get over here, but the one I use is called Pure Gardens. Francis, singing with your sister, fabulous. Eating some protein sometimes helps. Yep, absolutely. Eating protein when you get a headache. Oh, they're rolling in these chats. Yep. Bringing joy to the singing. Yes, let us know, Francis, how that goes with the singing. Aggie's probably left. Thank you so much for today. Francis, do we know what percentage of pregnancies begin as twins? Now you know that, Francis. Oh, I see. If it's 2% of the population, I think there's 1% are twins. Something like that. We can probably Google the latest research. Let me know if you find out and post it in the Facebook. And then Anne, can you post the traits of a twin personality? Oh, yep. So that you don't have to go and do the replay. Is that what you're saying? I reviewed them. Yeah.
There was one slide. I'm sorry. That was very quickly. I was screen capping all your slides.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to do that now because we're going to work with you, and then I'm going to have to go. Yeah. But there were 2 slides for the traits, the twin traits. You may want to go back and later. Yeah. But yeah. Okay. So if there are no questions, so you know, if you've got that, does anyone resonate with being a twin apart from me? Okay. Oh, all right. Okay. So I will let you know when it's going to happen. It'll happen on a Friday. And if you say, Cheryl, that Connie is ready, might happen either this coming Friday, yep, or 2 Fridays after the Rejuvenate My Brain, whatever you guys want.
You guys meaning Connie and I, or all of us here?
Well, I know you and Connie are ready. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can't do Friday. Oh, no, I didn't offer you Friday, did I? Next week. So yeah, depends how fast you want it. It's all ready to go. And we'll talk about that. Some of you are already in the Core Light program, so that's part of your program. And for Connie, she's part of you, Cheryl. If you want to join us, it is a tuition of 600. If anyone wants to join us that isn't already part of the group. Okay, so just let me know and we'll sign you up. But it's a 3-module program, and we'll be doing research, head stuff, and lots of experiential session work. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording.